So this is a Fleet biplane made in Fort Erie, actually, not in Buffalo. Reuben Fleet was the founder of Consolidated Aircraft, and they built aircraft in Buffalo, flying boats and other things. But he wanted to build civilian airplanes, so he started a separate little company in Fort Erie, Fleet Aircraft. And one of these things that they made was this Fleet biplane. Reuben Fleet wanted this to be sold primarily for civilian use as a trainer or that sort of thing, but the U.S. Navy actually bought 6 of them for a very special purpose. And if you look at the patch on the side of the biplane here, you see 2 men, the men on the flying trapeze, and that's because these aircraft, as purchased by the Navy, were to be launched and recovered from the Navy airships Akron and Macon. And if you look in here, you can see a Fleet biplane that actually hooks onto the trapeze and gets winched into the hangar inside the airship.
You know what I love about this period? It's crazy. Like, just to think of, because people were so passionate and so excited about what they were doing, that I think they just threw caution to the wind. And they had to, because the only way this technology was going to advance was people just saying, you know what, I'm going to do that. I'll try it.
And it worked. You know, these 2 airships, which are about the size of the German Hindenburg, which obviously a lot of people are familiar with, were flying aircraft carriers. They were specifically built for that purpose. It's not like they had the airships and the aircraft was an afterthought. So these airships were designed to hold 4 Curtiss fighters and this 1 Fleet biplane, and they were to be used for scouting purposes by the U.S. Navy in lieu of the role that would normally be performed by destroyers or cruisers.
How cool, though, when you think about, you know, my grandparents, their whole house was like a library, and they used to buy all those Time Life, you know, like, this is a glimpse of the future type of thing, and it'd be all these beautiful painted matte paintings of like airship wars, and you know, you get to, like, this is just so forward thinking for its time. And you know, like, who thought of that? Who's like, you know what, why don't we just go up in the air with the runway and we'll just drop them off of them?
Well, they wouldn't get dropped. They would lower them out,
they'd hoist them out,
and then they'd be hanging from the hook, and they would fly up and just fly back. In fact, the pilots who were already aircraft carrier qualified, once they gained airship certification and learned how to do it, they said it was actually easier to take off and land from the trapeze on the airship than on an aircraft carrier.
Oh, wow. Well, I would imagine, I mean, aircraft carriers, too, at that time were, I mean, it's pretty precarious.
They were smaller, but of course the planes were going a lot slower than the jets were today.
Right.
We can definitely talk about this. This is the Cunningham Hall GA-36. What most people don't realize, of course, people have heard of Curtiss, they've heard of Bell, but in the 20s and 30s, there were many small aircraft manufacturers in Western New York. One of them was the Cunningham Hall Company in Rochester, New York, founded by 2 gentlemen, Cunningham and Hall, and they built this aircraft to compete for an Army training contract. And it has a very unusual arrangement for short takeoff and landing. Instead of conventional flaps, it has this flap-like surface under the wing to help it take off and land in shorter distances. They made 2 of them, and the museum, actually it wasn't our museum, it was the Amherst Museum, about 25 years ago, give or take, purchased this aircraft. It was junk in a farmer's field. We have some photographs of it over here.
So it's just decomposing.
You can see the picture of the aircraft right there as it was when when our predecessor, the Amherst Museum, acquired it. And a bunch of very capable men, mostly Bell retirees, restored it to the beautiful condition that you can see it's in now.
And you guys picked it up from there?
When the Amherst Museum got rid of their aviation collection, our museum had already started and they donated it to us.
And so now the wings on this is a whole nother style, correct?
Well, this is a monoplane.
Okay.
Instead of a biplane, it only has a single wing. You can see the aluminum frame inside the wing. We deliberately covered this with plexiglass instead of cloth so you could see it. And of course, in case no one has noticed, the fuselage is made of metal because this is progressing into the metal era of aircraft.
Okay.
But the control surfaces and the wings are still very tight doped cloth.
Okay.
And we'll talk about that transition from cloth to metal more on the Curtiss side.